All right, podcast.
Podcast. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the internet, live from the Marriott Library at the University of Utah. This is the Red Line Podcast. I'm your host, quote, Suburban Subway, unquote, Dunstan, and these are my co-hosts.
Kyle, quote, A-Train, Holland, and...
Alex, I can't think of a quote right now, Fielder. Today we're discussing several little-known rail systems in upstate New York, one of which still exists and has one of the strangest operating patterns of any light rail system in the world. All this after the news.
News item number 1. Battery buses strike again. Battery buses have gained a reputation as highly unreliable nearly since their introduction to service, and the latest news out of Milwaukee doesn't help to change that image. The Milwaukee County Transit Service has recalled all 11 of their battery bus fleet from their Connect One BRT service until further notice after the manufacturer detected possible issues with the batteries. At this time, it is unknown when they will return to service.
Lovely. Second worst application of vehicle-scale batteries.
It's a shame the battery electric buses in Milwaukee don't have removable and replaceable batteries similar to Milwaukee drills.
Maybe they should, those like clip things that you use for the drills, right? They stick a really big one of those on top of each bus, and you just kind of get a little crane and go, and then when you get to the end of the line, you pull it off, you stick it on something else to charge it, and then you pull off a new one. It's just like doing drywall.
Or just have a small EV that has connecting plugs, and you back it into the bus, then it goes along with the ride, and then you pull it out and charge it and stick a new one in.
That's a really good idea, actually.
That's a great plan.
It's a trailer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Item number 2. That was a weird news item. Item number 2. Another rail expansion is planned to open soon, with Sound Transit's Tacoma streetcar planning to begin service on its new Hilltop extension in September of this year. The new line adds 7 new stations and 2.4 miles of track, more than doubling the length of the system. Although the new alignment is a bit strange, effectively doubling back on the previous route, it's likely to attract high ridership, as the T-line carried nearly 3,000 riders before the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Cool.
And it
based
just connects,
in Seattle.
Yeah, based in Seattle. Someday it will connect to the Link, trademark Link Line 1.
One day.
Someday, God willing, inshallah, etc. So that this has been the news.
Do.
Ready?
Yep.
The show or whatever.
So, okay, don't look at this script for right now because I want your honest reaction to this. What if I told you... have you heard of Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, the cold, snowy one by the lake.
Alex, have you heard of Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, it's one of the bits in The Office. It's where they have an office in the office.
Fun fact, I did not know that. So what if I were to tell you that cold, snowy Buffalo, that, the only thing it's ever in the news for is, like, having the world's most deadly winter storm?
Uh-huh.
What if I told you they have a subway?
Well, I guess it'd better be underground because it's so cold.
I'd be surprised. I feel like that's something that would have come up before.
Well, a lot of people are surprised by this because they do have a subway. And
how big even is Buffalo's metro area?
1.1 million.
Yeah. How come they get a subway?
Because the 70s. Lyndon B. Johnson. Great society indeed.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
This is an Urban Mass Transportation Administration thing.
Oh, right.
So,
for the 10 years that existed.
Yes, correct. So Buffalo is a beautiful city sitting on the eastern edges of Lake Erie in upstate New York. It has a metro area population of around 1.1 million and is a historic home of heavy industry and hub for commerce.
Makes sense. Lake shipping.
Shipping be like. Also, the Erie Canal. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the history of that, but it was the most important trade artery in America for a while.
Does it go from the lake to the ocean?
It does. It runs from the lake through New York State to the ocean.
That would do it.
Yeah.
So, quite important. Unfortunately, this thing called deindustrialization happened.
Classic Midwest move.
Classic Midwest move. And, although they'd been able to adapt several times, right after the canal was like, oh, this is obsolete now because we've invented these things called railroads.
Ooh.
I did that in scare quotes.
The canal of the land.
The canal of the land.
In terms of shipping efficiencies.
So when those were invented, the canal is suddenly useless, 10 years after it was made.
Rip.
But then Buffalo becomes the second largest rail hub in North America
after Chicago? Midwest moment.
And then when the railroads are no longer the big deal, they're like, let's do steel. We're going to make lots of steel and coal
I bet that'll last real long.
Incorrect. After 1950, that did not last.
That never lasts long.
That's a classic move.
Yeah.
Classic Midwest move.
It's not in the Midwest.
Oh.
It's Rust Belt, though. You have to understand that those are overlapping but different categories.
And the Rust Belt's wider, the Midwest is taller.
Yes, I think that's correct, actually.
All right. Asterisk, classic Rust Belt move.
Yeah. Because you're going to get a whole bunch of people yelling at you if you call it Midwest.
Average Midwesterner.
Yes, very much. So although it was able to kind of adapt from all of those things, it was not able to adapt when all of the industry just died and moved.
All of it?
Basically.
And they couldn't just keep pivoting?
They couldn't just keep pivoting. Its decline was pretty shocking. The city went from a mid-century peak of nearly 600,000 residents to just 260,000 by 2010.
Ghost town.
Yeah, that's no good.
Less
Basically
than half.
Detroit.
I believe the figure is 55% population decline.
Was this better or worse than Detroit?
I think worse.
Damn.
Let me look it up real quick so I'm not incorrect here.
That's a first.
No, it may be the city in the world that's hit the hardest by post-industrial decline, so we'll have to... No, not worse than Detroit. I take that back. Detroit's at around a third-ish.
Oh, okay.
Of its peak population.
Good for Buffalo.
So, not as bad as Detroit, but still pretty freaking bad.
Yeah.
But, the people who live places generally don't like those places going down the drain.
Weird human thing.
As you may be aware.
Yeah. So how is Buffalo today?
Well, today it hosts a diversified service economy and is actually growing a decent clip. It's beginning urban revival, and that revival sweeping across the Rust Belt cities altogether.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
So, that's good news. But we're not here to talk about Buffalo. As a whole.
Oh.
We're here to talk about their bizarre subway.
I was having fun talking about Buffalo as a whole.
So as Buffalo's city center continued to decline in population throughout the second half of the 1900s, state, federal, and local leaders began to look for a way to revitalize downtown and improve transportation in the region.
Wow.
Seems pretty reasonable to me.
Noble goal. Average smart move.
Average smart move. So although there was a decent bus system, which had mostly replaced the region's streetcars route for route after they were torn in the 1940s, it was thought that something higher order was going to be needed for the future of the city.
Very period appropriate thought.
Yes, and a side note and a fun fact, the company that operated the interurbans and streetcars in the Buffalo-Niagara area was called the International Railway.
What? Because it touched Canada?
Because they ran interurban services to Canada. You could get a commuter train to Canada from Buffalo.
That's amazing.
At least they took advantage of the name.
Yeah, aren't they closer to insert large Canadian city than New York?
Probably Toronto.
Yeah.
Or Montreal.
That makes sense.
So, people from the suburbs didn't want to drive downtown, so everyone was like, Hey, what's the thing that Washington just did?
It starts with an M.
Does start with an
The
M.
M is in a big square black box.
I think it's like it comes from the same word as metropolitan, maybe.
Metro subway link.
Yes. Actually, that may be this system's like closest contemporary. Actually, so that is an interesting comparison. So. The plan was conceived in the late 1960s, and it was supposed to run a single metro line from downtown to the University of Buffalo, with more lines to come at a later date.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah, I always like how they connect it to universities. Very smart move.
Yeah, as a university student, I'm a fan and a member of the all-powerful university student lobby. I'm a big fan of the downtown university connections.
I take the Red Line to school every day, so
There you go.
It's probably a good idea to connect universities to rapid transit.
It's also free ridership most of the time.
It is kind of free ridership, yeah. College students are poor.
And it's socially acceptable for them to be poor, more importantly, for building transit infrastructure.
That's very true. So, but rather than a traditional heavy rail metro, the Niagara Front Transit Authority planned to build a, quote, light rail rapid transit system, unquote.
What year was this?
So this is just before 1970.
That seems like a pretty early use of that terminology.
Well, I think they were trying to derive, like, from Germans, right?
Oh, where everything wasn't certified freight rolling stock?
Yes.
It seems like an interesting choice, but I'm sure you'll tell us the reason.
There wasn't a reason. They were just like, regular subway too big for small Buffalo.
Oh. So they thought far enough ahead to have a metro system, and then they thought, oh, well, we won't expand. We won't get any bigger.
Basically, yeah. So basically, it was just going to be a subway, but using light rail rolling stock. So like Muni Metro or German U-Bahn systems. There's a lot of German U-Bahns that just use like light rail trains with high floors. So.
All right then. Speaking of high floors.
Yeah, it does use some unique cars, high floors for subway stations, but they have steps that fold out when it leaves the tunnel so that they can serve the low platforms on the transit mall.
So kind of like low-tech Muni SD200s.
Yes, very low-tech because, like, I kid you not, like, the steps just, like, flop outwards.
That's hilarious. What if they don't flop up on the way back into the tunnel?
I think there's enough clearance, but they are normally flop back up, if I remember correctly.
That's amazing.
I like a good low-tech solution.
Hey, if it works, man, I'm not going to complain.
Hey, we could run our SD 160 high floors with gap fillers that extend into the stairwell.
And then flop.
And then extend out before the train leaves.
Oh my gosh.
It's a great plan. Yes, it
that
will not be fraught with problems.
Plan. Common Kyle L.
Thanks, I think.
You're welcome. So this line would, in a rather interesting version of the usual way metro or even light rail systems operate, run on the surface in the center city and in a fully grade-separated subway out into the suburbs under Buffalo's Main Street.
Question?
Yes.
Why?
I'm gonna say that this is our old friend using transit for revitalization downtown instead of transit, because, you know, a subway station will clearly do much less to revitalize downtown than a streetcar stop.
Sure.
That feels like the backwards link to me.
Yes.
That seems evil.
It is a little cursed. So although it was initially hoped that construction might begin as soon as 1970, things didn't go to plan. Cost overruns and planning issues meant that the system didn't begin construction until 1979, almost 10 years later.
That's a long time. This seems pretty...
And well into the light rail era by that point, I should say.
Seems pretty poorly run for a 70s project. I had higher expectations.
It's always nice to know that we're not the first ones to experience cost overruns and massive delays.
Yeah,
Good to
Very
know.
true.
People have dealt with it before.
I gotta look up an inflation calculator real quick because the line was considered quite expensive by its day's standards. It was $250 million to build the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And it's 6.5 miles long.
Okay, so how much is 250 million today?
That is what I'm trying to work out because I forgot to do this earlier. So 1979 to today.
That's 40 million a mile in the 70s.
It's pretty cheap by today's standards, but $168 million by today per mile, which is quite good for what is mostly a subway. Yeah.
For being a subway.
And for being
Mostly.
cost overridden, too.
Yeah, well, it was initially planned to go 10 miles all the way to the northern, because the University of Buffalo has two campuses. It has a northern campus and a southern campus. So it was initially planned to go all the way to the northern campus, but they had to cut it back because it cost too much at $40 million a mile, and it only goes to University's South Campus. So it's about 6.5 miles in total length.
Rip.
Yeah, that seems like a shame. I feel like they could have done clever stuff connecting both campuses.
Here, let me pull up the map real quick.
Yeah, did they ever finish it?
No. They did not, which is not ideal. So on this map, the Maple Station is where it would have ended originally. So you see, that's a very poor image, but basically where it runs to now is University. It was meant to go up to Maple, basically.
And all those green stops on the bottom are the downtown ones, and they're 3 feet apart?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. Couldn't have just done, 3 metro stations.
No.
They did cut it back a lot, then.
Yeah, and, those other ones up there are, a newer plan for extension. So everyone's been trying to get the thing extended since it was finished. And have largely been unsuccessful, but that's for later. So...
And it was finished in 1986, which is, last I checked, a long time ago.
Yeah, it was finished in 3 stages. First stage, the 1.2 miles of surface downtown transit mall were opened in 84.
That took 5 years.
Well, yeah, they were building the subway at the same time.
Oh, yeah, fair.
And the line to Amherst Street, which is the third to last station, was completed in 85, with the final stretch to University South Campus, as it was called at the time, because they thought they were going to make University North Campus also a station.
But no.
Now renamed to University. That was completed in 86, bringing the line to its current extent.
So it did take a long time to build then. Well, with the delays.
7 years in total. The completed system was 6.4 miles in length, of which 1.2 were on the surface, 1.7 were in a cut-and-cover tunnel under Main Street, and the remaining 3.5 were in a deep-bore rock tunnel.
And we wonder why it cost money.
So...
That's deep bore, jeez.
Yeah, which was kind of unusual for the time as well, to, I don't know, in the suburbs, why? Just
yeah.
I don't know, elevate it, man.
That couldn't be for, bomb shelters, could it?
I don't think so. This was kind of largely completed after the era when everyone was really afraid of nuclear war.
It's also in Buffalo.
Yeah, I don't know if Buffalo was ever a real big target for the Soviet Union.
No offense to Buffalo.
That's a good point. Unless they were working off bad intel saying we still use the Erie Canal.
We need to take down the Erie Canal in order to cripple American trade. Yes, So the whole route, all 6.4 miles, takes about 20 minutes to traverse, which is not bad. If you'll believe it, I think over half of that is spent on the downtown transit mall.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good once you get out of the downtown transit mall.
If you look it up on Transit app, you can look up frequency, but I believe it was 10 minutes before pandemic, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
really
probably
good.
should be better, given that it's the only line and that they've spent so much money on it.
But, so unfortunately, the transit mall did not work out as planned in terms of revitalization, and parts of it were open to cars in 2015 after local merchants complained.
I'm looking at the satellite map here, and that seems a bit goofy given that there's parallel streets mere inches away by Salt Lake standards and a bajillion and a half alleys, and all the parking lots don't even face Main Street.
We know how merchants feel about this sort of thing.
This is true. If you have one street parking space in front of your shop, you must defend that with your life because everybody parks in the one street parking space.
True.
Yeah.
People don't like walking, so...
Walking, that's bad. It's not as though we have legs for a reason or anything.
Yeah.
So, also unfortunately, initial ridership did not live up to expectations, mostly because of Buffalo's rapid depopulation in the area after its completion.
That might have also crippled any expansion plans.
Yeah, the line was never extended because of the high cost per rider associated with building the original line.
It makes sense why they wouldn't base off of it, but it is a shame.
It is an awful shame because it's fun. If only that. So ridership plateaued in the 2010s, about 20,000 to 25,000 riding on any given day, which I will say is not bad for such a short line. If we do the calculations, that's like
over
2,500 per mile.
Well, it's only 6.5 miles.
Yeah, so 6.5 miles, 20,000 to... Oh, that is over 3,000.
That's over 3,000 per mile, which is like damn fine.
Well, and that's partially because A, Buffalo is extremely poor, and B, it is still a subway.
It is a subway. It goes burr.
You know, and that South Campus station, I'm sure, helps.
Oh, I'm sure. Imagine if they ran it to North Campus.
Yeah, that probably contributes a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, also, there's a lot of unfortunately's in this story. Post-pandemic recovery has been poor. Less than 10,000 now ride on most weekdays.
Oof.
Yeah,
That's,
a little painful.
Yeah, that's pretty...
And I checked in weekday services every 12 minutes, not 10.
Oh, well, like I said, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, you know... But there is hope for the line. Because in 2018, Governor Andrew Cuomo, curses be upon his name, for firing Andy Byford, paid for a study to steady expanding the line, finally, to the North Campus. And as of time of completion of this podcast, I was not able to find any resources indicating as to whether said study has been completed. But
good step.
It's something. And there's a lot of advocacy to extend it in different ways as well.
I'm sure it's going to cost a ton of money to complete, but...
Oh, certainly.
I think the idea is that they're going to build that part at grade. Not street running, but at grade.
Does that part end at... No, it can't end at deep bore. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. There's also... Here, I'll show you another map. I'll send you another map. This one shows kind of the future extensions that everyone wants to do, and also what's called the Tonawandis corridor, which is a disused freight line that runs through some of the most impoverished sections of the city. And the idea is that you could have the line up to North Campus as well as that corridor both feed to downtown. And then...
Light rail go burr.
Yeah. So, there's also possibilities in the south. There's a lot of disused rail infrastructure in Buffalo because it used to be Chicago.
Sounds ripe for an absolutely massive light rail project.
So there's a lot of potential for what you could do if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and especially since Buffalo is seeing a population revival recently, this could be something that the city should maybe look into investing in. Just as a thought.
Worth looking into. Yeah.
Then they could have a system instead of one unfinished line.
Kind of sad little line, yeah.
That has all of the infrastructure.
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, you could run a lot of trains through that thing, so...
Yeah.
Especially if you maybe finish the tunnel into downtown instead of just having it become a weird surface line, but
Interesting.
So, yeah, there's one of 3 weird upstate New York things we will be talking about today.
Cool. Go Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good for them. At least they have a system.
Yeah. At least they have a line.
This is very high on my bucket list to ride, because like the Metro subway link, because I think those lines have a lot in common in that they were meant to be part of a grander system,
but then nope.
But only one weird, mostly useless line ever got built. So
interesting how systems work.
So, yeah, thing number 2 is what is known as the Syracuse OnTrack.
That's a lovely name.
The name's brimming with optimism. I like it.
Yes, it is.
Bit too much optimism. I'm scared.
And I will say that it may be the strangest or second strangest suburban rail line in history. I think it has to compete with the West in Portland for that title.
Oh, yeah, that one.
So, in 1994, a Syracuse University graduate proposed using an old Conrail line to restore rail service to the city nearly 50 years after interurban and streetcar service ceased.
Okay.
Exciting, right?
Yeah.
And it should be noted that Syracuse was at this time in a similar terminal phase of population decline to Buffalo. Although that has also been reversed recently, so
cool.
Very good.
Sweet.
They bought the line from Conrail for $1 because Conrail really didn't want it.
I love that.
They were tired of paying to maintain it.
And Conrail at the time had plenty of other stuff on their hands.
Yeah, they had a lot of things to worry about. And then they leased it to the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railway for freight service on the condition that they would also run a fare passenger service. I believe the conditions were at least 250 days a year of operation and 1,250 total round trips per year, which averages out to about 10 trains a day on weekdays.
Okay, so just probably no weekend service.
Except there was.
Oh,
Because in the beginning, it was actually quite good because New York State gave the railroad a big tax break to run the service, and then also bought them 5 just ancient bud stainless steel rail cars to run it with.
I bet they sure had wheels.
They were, think a pacer, right? You know what a pacer is?
I don't.
It's this weird British rail bus from the 90s. This is kind of a similar thing. It's basically the ancient father of a DMU.
Okay, then. That sounds pretty special.
So, I imagine you said 10 trips on a weekday? Does that mean 2 trips a day?
So 10 trips per weekday.
Oh, per weekday. Okay.
10 round trips per weekday.
Yeah.
So it was
you scared me.
I assume basically 1 midday train and several peak hour trains per direction, and then a couple off time trains.
Very commuter service.
Yeah, just kind of a classic suburban commuter service. Except it didn't really go to the suburbs, and it was mostly just in the city of Syracuse. But we'll get to that.
Okay. It sounds like an interesting caveat, but...
Yeah, it was about, I believe 10 miles long in total, so it was not a particularly long line.
This is a really weird service pattern for a 10-mile long line.
Yeah, I'll send you the map. I'll send you the map, and you can see what you think. So it ran daily between Syracuse University and Walsh Transportation Center. That was called the city service, and that was the thing that would do 10 trips. But out to Jonesville, which was kind of like a local recreation area, they would run weekend service with flag stops at the different places along the way, so that you could go to the lake with your family on the Syracuse OnTrack.
Bruh, this alignment just looks like a light rail or something.
It's kind of special, isn't it?
Yeah, the stops are so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it looks very strange.
You are correct. The service was actually a really big hit in the beginning, if you'll believe it. 45,000 rode in the first 3 months, which I believe is about 25 people per trip, which is pretty good on like the 6-mile little line there.
Yeah.
Which also, I should note, didn't really touch any residential neighborhoods at all. So,
this is the weirdest service pattern ever.
Yeah. But yeah, it was quite popular for the first couple years, but then the NYSW, that's the New York, Susquehanna, and Western, that's the railroad that ran it, started grifting from the subsidies that they got to operate it and using the subsidies to maintain their other track, like in other places, rather than on the thing they were supposed to spend it on.
Which is not how that's supposed to work.
Right, and because of that, ridership decreased because they weren't advertising anymore, and it just kind of became your classic transit death spiral, and unfortunately, the line shut down in 2008, only 14 years after it opened.
That's
Rip.
a shame.
It is a shame. A proposed extension that would have made it more viable by taking it more stops into downtown was also killed off by the railroads.
What, were they busy using it for freight?
No.
Then what were they on about?
You see those weird little dotted section downtown?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was for.
Bro, that's like 3 feet. What do the railroads want?
I don't know. Probably wanted to run one switching train over it a day.
Probably, yeah.
But, and there's a lot of optimism in upstate New York cities at the moment, which is a good thing, I think.
A lot of funding, too.
You guys may remember Syracuse from our freeway removal episode.
Ooh, I do now.
So, there are hopes among local activists of bringing it back, but as a light rail line, and also kind of getting it to places where people live as well, instead of just like random spots where it was before.
Grand idea.
I know, big plan, having a service for people be able to be used by people. Interesting. Idea.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Make it into a light rail. I'd assume freight service is long gone.
I think that it's like a lot of train tracks in America where it sees like 3 weekly movements of a train with like 4 cars from a grain silo or something.
Perfect for a light rail.
But I am not under the impression that it has anything resembling frequent freight service running over it.
Cool.
Does the city of Syracuse still own the right-of-way, the track?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that
I can't
gets
imagine
run off.
they would get rid of it.
I don't think they have, but then again, Cincinnati is selling the railroad that they own at the moment, so you never know.
Okay. Well, interesting.
Another weird note that I had in my head, and now I can't remember. Okay, on to the next one, because as it turns out, all 3 of the major upstate New York cities have weird
rails.
old rail lines. Yeah. And this is the Rochester subway.
Cool.
Which no longer exists, but upstate New York was quite a happening place back in the day, and in 1927 the city of Rochester finished work on a new downtown subway to get the streetcars off their traffic-ridden streets. Interestingly, only 2 miles of the subway were actually underground, with the rest running below grade in a trench in the depths of a former canal.
That's clever.
That's just the train
I
showing
like
its
that.
Yeah.
I've never.
Supremacy. That's awesome.
I think that may be unique in the entire world. Actually, is a service running in a former canal. So, I don't know if anyone knows about some weird European thing that does that. Let me know. But like, I haven't heard of that anywhere else.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
So initially it was basically like, you know how we always love to talk in North America now about like having center city tunnels for all of our regional rail to interrun through?
Yeah,
like
so it goes burr.
Like they have everywhere in Europe?
Uh-huh.
This was that, except for interurbans.
Cool.
So like all the interurbans from all the areas around it would run into the thing, go into downtown, then go back out the other direction.
That's cool. So it was through running.
Yeah, so it was basically a modern S-Bahn tunnel in the 1920s.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
But then all the interurbans closed, and it was left as a weird spur line that just had service, of little old ancient streetcars running through it. And it was closed in 1956 due to low ridership. And because the city has been extremely broke from massive population decline, they have slowly been filling it in over the years in order to not have to maintain it.
That's very unfortunate.
So most of the former 2 miles of subway downtown is gone, and almost all of the Canal Trench is now gone, meaning that this would be very difficult to reactivate.
That's a damn shame.
Well, as long as you're not putting sewer lines in the infill. Oh boy. Never mind.
So...
Rust Belt moment.
Yeah, I kind of can imagine a better world where you have, like, you know, in Paris you have, like, the RER, like the Rochester RER, the Réseau Express Rochester or something, you know. But it wasn't to be, sadly. So.
Yeah, it's sad that this one of our three does not have a path forward.
No, that would be very difficult.
It has a wall made out of sewer lines and buried transmission lines.
Like, it's not like the Cincinnati subway where it's just still sitting there empty. This one is kind of just mostly gone. Yeah.
That's a real shame, because that seems like it might have been the most promising out of the three.
Well, Rochester is, I believe, the largest city of the three by a relatively large margin, if I am correct. Let me check. Oh, never mind. It's about the same as Buffalo. Okay, well, you know, Buffalo has a subway. Rochester should too.
Yeah.
Well, I should see if we can find any photos of the canal running section.
That'd be fun.
That would be a cool photo.
That'd be great to have.
Alternatively, we could get some pictures of the cute little NFTA metro trains in the tunnel.
Aww.
I know. Just the baby.
Very
I think
snazzy.
they can run 3-car trains in it. So.
Wow, 3 whole cars.
I know.
Very light.
At least it's not Portland trademark. So that's all I got for today. Any thoughts on the various New York subways?
It just seems a shame that so many of them are gone. It seems like something that people would be very excited about supporting now.
Yeah, it's sad that they all got hit with the same sort of massive population decline and all missed like 1.5 billion opportunities to do all these cool projects.
Yeah, I'm just happy that cities like Cleveland and St. Louis and Chicago and Buffalo, that all experienced these things, still managed to keep some weird rapid transportation infrastructure around.
Yeah.
Because that'll set them really well for the future when they will be, you know, thriving, growing again.
You know what they say, the best time to build rapid transit was in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, true.
And why build it once when you can build it again?
Oh, so true. Someday in the future, when Rochester is like a mega city of like 10 billion people, they're going to be kicking themselves for tearing out that subway.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening, and please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and to leave us a rating on iTunes and Spotify. If you like what we do on the show, you can become a member on Patreon. Patrons get early access to episodes, as well as exclusive content and occasional merch drops. Let me pull it up real quick. That was a fun episode. I was glad. I've always wanted to talk about that, but just Buffalo and just Rochester and just Syracuse aren't enough to talk about on their own.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to bundle them together.
They easily could be enough to talk about on their own if all these projects happened.
True.
Yeah. No, I think it was good grouping them together.
And the title of the episode must be The Other New York Subway, (S), close parentheses. The Other New York Subway. Okay, so at Super Duper, Hyper Trooper Duper Looper, cool frontrunner, we have Zach Adams at $69.69 a month and Generic GT at $35 per month. At regular frontrunner tier, $10 a month, we have Curtis Herring, Devin Zander, Mike Christensen, and Phobos 2390.
At $5 a month, our red line tier, we have Brian Smith, Christopher Whaley, DJ
Hi, Will.
Watkins, Eliza Kensler, Jacob Whitecotton, Jesse Mayo, Reluctant LA Resident, Robert P. Walsh, and Scott Harris.
Blue Line tier, $3. We have Alex Dykowski, Ben Busath, Bradley Bondi, Ethan McDonald, Evelyn, G4, Gonzo 12, Jack Dean, John Heron Gorman, Martine.
Oh, no Hecker Martinez anymore.
Heckin' Martine.
Darn it.
Matt Gray, Seth, and Zach Verstott.
And at our $1 tier, green line, we have Capel. Or Capel.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you all.
That's all, folks. You can find our sources in the description and make sure to look out for other stuff coming soon, trademark.
Really, it's almost like we produce content in the content mill.
In the mines.
Yeah.
Mining away. I don't know what to mine.
Mining away.
Yeah. Oh, also, OGX review. Brief review.
It's a bus.
It was unsurprisingly disappointing.
The stops were really nice. The Weaver State Campus busway is a bit wonky, but objectively useful.
Oh, it's very weird. You're going to have to write it someday soon, Alex, because it has a whole bunch of single tracking sections.
Yeah, I'll be going down to Layton next weekend, so maybe I'll stop in Ogden and ride it.
Yeah,
Down there.
it's so exciting. Anyways, but other than the nice stops, there's one weird stop that was on a left turn, which was cool, and the busway, which is useful, even if it's weird. It was just a bus.
Interesting.
It actually lost on travel time to the 6:30, 6:03.
Yeah, it did lose on travel time to the old bus route by about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, it did hold for time a bit, so I'm suspecting that under passenger load,
It's about the same.
it'll be about the same, maybe slightly better.
So $130 million for no reason.
Yeah, maybe we should have spent
transit.
maybe they should have spent $30 million on the stops, buses, and the busway.
Instead of the road expansion?
Or maybe
Yeah.
all of it on the busway, because it's not like they're using particularly special buses anyway. And
Yeah, that's true. They could have just run standard buses,
And
so we already
stops
have.
don't need to look beautiful. That can be done afterwards as
Well,
well.
They could have. That is true. And instead of doing the iconic BRT stops, they could have just done bus shelters that hang over the sidewalk
Yeah, they could have.
and just get some stock ones.
They honestly could have designed it more like the light rail, like the track stops. I feel like those probably would have
Yeah.
been cheaper.
Actually, maybe.
Well, and they just built a new one of
Probably
those.
right.
So
Yeah.
whatever.
It'll be fine. At least it's there, I guess.
At least that money didn't go towards highways. So
Yeah.
it could have been used infinitely better.
Yeah.
It sort of did.
It could sort of did with the road widening. It actually
Yeah,
kind of really
it-
did.
yeah.
Well, at least there is a tangible transit benefit. Sort of.
At least it was in Mass Transit magazine. It
Great.
It was
worth,
in mass transit.
it was worth it just for the
I'm
mention in the magazine.
I'm so looking forward to the Mid-Valley Connector, which will be like this, but worse on every front.
I don't know how it could get worse than how it is now, but okay.
As you like it.
We're learning about Syracuse over
I'm
here.
looking at Syracuse on Google Maps.
We Syracuse and on G for
Oh,
real.
the fun fact, you can actually still visit the Syracuse OnTrack stop. It does still exist. Or for Syracuse University, it's just never been torn out. So,
That's fun.
yeah.
We should go film a horror show there.
That'd be pretty good.
Metro the game, except with jump scares and knives.
People
I'm
would
scared.
eat that. Should I stop recording?
Yeah, you might as well.
Alright.